The early 2000s was an interesting time for rock. Several bands were being hailed as revitalizing the stale genre, including groups like The Strokes, The White Stripes, and today's topic, Queens of the Stone Age. The group's third record, Songs for the Deaf, to some, marked the peak of the group's career. Let's talk about the history of the album in today's video. Queens of the Stone Age formed in 1996 in Seattle, Washington by vocalist and guitarist Josh Homme. The band's roots can be traced back to the dissolution of Homme's previous band, the stoner rock outfit Kyuss, which was a significant part of the Palm Desert music scene, a scene that was largely created out of necessity. As Homme recalled in one interview, not being old enough to travel to LA to see punk rock shows, telling The Guardian, "We'd go out in the desert with a generator and play these parties that lasted all night. Sometimes they were magically mystical things, and sometimes they were dominated by Mexican gang members on acid firing their shotguns in the air." Kyuss, a largely underappreciated group, put out 4 records, with their last 2 on major label Elektra, 1994's Welcome to Sky Valley, and the following year's aptly titled And the Circus Leaves Town. Dave Grohl was even singing Kyuss's praises as early as 1992 when he was in Nirvana.
Well, the funny thing is that the future of grunge music is now evolving from Palm Springs, California. A band named Kyuss, Kyuss, which is the album of 1992. It's called Blues for the Red Sun, and it cannot be beaten.
The band even found fans in Metallica, and if you guys have ever played Guitar Hero Metallica, the game, of course, apart from featuring Metallica's best-known songs, also consisted of bands that Metallica were fans of or toured with. Kyuss is featured on the game with their song Demon Cleaner. Kyuss ended up dissolving by 1995, with member Brant Bjork remarking to Loudersound, "Business started to dictate what we were doing, and the spirit of creativity and camaraderie and brotherhood, all that made our band pure and organic, started to evaporate." Homme briefly joined the outfit Screaming Trees in the summer of '96 as a touring guitarist. You guys might remember Screaming Trees from the early 90s with their record Sweet Oblivion and their hit song Nearly Lost You, as well as their great follow-up and final record 1996's Dust. The band ended up calling it quits in 2000. Following his stint with Screaming Trees, Homme really wasn't sure what he wanted to do. He remarked to The Guardian, "Then I had this idea of giant waves of sound sweeping over me. I had an image in my head from an old Warner Brothers cartoon of big staggering robots. And that, I suppose, was my idea for Queens of the Stone Age, broken, drunk robots." But the ideas in Homme's head were going to, of course, take some time. He remarked to The Guardian how he thought it would probably take 3 albums to explain his vision to the public, adding, "I'm going to play whatever I want. You can't move too fast or you just lose everybody." The first record needed to step away from Kyuss and announce a new sound, which was repetition, trance, and simplicity. Then the second record needed to fan the music out so we could display it and play whatever we wanted. So the third record, to get it right, should combine the first 2 and go even further. That third record is today's topic, Songs for the Deaf. Homme added to The Guardian how Kyuss felt too restrictive in terms of what you could and couldn't do. He added, "I put a band together, and 2 days before we started the record, I had another guy singing, a really talented guy, an amazing musician, and amazing player. But we just had a different vision. I could only realize mine if I stepped up and became the singer. But becoming the frontman was a daunting task, so he stepped out of the spotlight and went to the underground because, as Homme put it, that was the only place he was going to get honest feedback." Initially, Homme called his new group Gamma Ray. Under this moniker, he released a self-titled 2-song EP in 1996 that consisted of the tracks Born to Hula and If Only Everything. However, due to a naming conflict with a German power metal band who formed in 1989, he was forced to change the name. The band by this point consisted of Homme as the principal songwriter and lead singer, along with former Screaming Trees bassist Van Conner, former Kyuss singer John Garcia, who who provided background vocals, and drummer Victor Indrizzo, and former Kyuss producer Chris Goss. The name Queens of the Stone Age was chosen as a provocative juxtaposition to this macho image that was synonymous with rock music. Homme remarked to an interview in 2000, "The kings of the Stone Age wear armor and have axes and wrestle. The queens of the Stone Age hang out with the kings of the Stone Age's girlfriends when they wrestle. Rock should be heavy enough for the boys and sweet enough for the girls. That way, everyone is happy. It's more of a party. Kings of the Stone Age is too lopsided." With a new name in tow, the group released their self-titled debut album in 1998 on Stone Gossard and Regan Hagar's label Loose Groove Records. For this album, Homme played both guitar and bass under the alter ego Carlo von Sexron. Homme remarked how you can hear his apprehension in his voice about being a singer, adding, "Oh, I hate my voice, but I have to do this. It's not a perfect record, but it has a thing to it. It has its own wicked way." Despite his reservations, though, by 1999, Rolling Stone was hailing Queens of the Stone Age as one of the most important heavy and hard bands in rock. Shortly after the group released their first LP, former Kyuss bassist Nick Oliveri joined the group. The former Kyuss bandmates reconnected after not seeing each other for a year. Homme shared to the Oregonian that he was at South by Southwest, and he was at a show where all the music business people in attendance were talking about record company mergers. Playing on stage that night was Oliveri, who was naked, using a piece of string as a strap for his bass, wearing nothing but Converse sneakers on stage. Homme was shocked to see Oliveri blowing fire into the crowd at head level. It was the first time they'd seen each other in a year, and Homme knew right away he wanted to have Oliveri be his bass player. This marked the beginning of a period of frequent lineup changes that became characteristic of the band. The group's second record, Rated R, came out in 2000 and featured a more diverse range of contributors. The album featured the eyebrow-raising tune Feel Good Hit of the Summer, which consists of a grocery list of addictive substances, some legal, some not. It also featured Judas Priest frontman Rob Halford on the track as well. The band famously was supposed to play a Los Angeles rehab facility in 2006, and it was reported the band opened their set with the song, and well, as you can imagine, they were escorted off the premises by security. Rated R also contained the band's first charting US single, The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, which peaked at number 21 on the US mainstream rock tracks chart, and number 36 on the alternative airplay chart. Rated R soon won awards and nominations for Album of the Year from the rock press, and they were soon being heralded as one of the saviors of rock alongside bands like the White Stripes and the Strokes. But Homme kept his ego in check, telling Louder Sound, "Is rock and roll in trouble? Is it drowning somewhere? And I don't know. I've been listening to good rock music since I was a kid. I mean, I love our music and I want other people to love it as well. But I just don't know that rock needed saving." Attention soon turned to the group's third album. Some of the songs for the record dated back to Homme's Desert Sessions, a side project he'd started in 1997 with various guest collaborators, including PJ Harvey, Twiggy Ramirez, and even Dean Ween. In fact, 4 of the songs on their third album came out of those early Desert Sessions in some shape or form, including the album's breakout hit No One Knows, came from the Desert Sessions track Cold Sore Superstars. The lineup that made their third album consisted of former Screaming Trees frontman Mark Lanegan, bassist and vocalist Nick Oliveri, Homme, of course, and Foo Fighters frontman Dave Grohl on drums. There were also a number of additional musicians who were credited on the album. But interestingly enough, Dave Grohl wasn't supposed to work on the record. Grohl had met Oliveri and Homme back in 1997, and Queens of the Stone Age went on tour with Foo Fighters in 2000. Grohl had remarked in earlier interviews that he wished he had been asked to play on Rated R. Drummer Gene Troutman started working on the album, but he dropped out due to other commitments, so Grohl was offered the spot. The timing seemed perfect given that Foo Fighters were dealing with a lot of internal turmoil surrounding the recording of their fourth album, One by One, best known for the hits All My Life and Times Like These. It wasn't just Grohl who joined the group, as Dean Ween also appeared on the record, playing on 3 of the tracks. Homme was expecting to use the loose feel and experimental nature of the Desert Sessions for this album, but he hit some roadblocks. At the insistence of the record label Interscope, they suggested producer Eric Valentine, who was very regimented and organized. At the same time, the band wanted to create a very diverse record, and they achieved this due to Homme, Lanigan, and Oliveri sharing vocal duties. Interscope grew impatient with the band. While they were getting rave reviews up until this point, it wasn't translating into big record sales, at least not yet. Interscope also had concerns about the lack of cohesiveness of the album's songs. I mean, the big question was, how would they tie all the tracks together? A concept was finally devised where the album would take the listeners on a fictional road trip from Los Angeles through the California desert to Joshua Tree, a drive that Homme had done many times before. In fact, he remarked the louder sound, "When I do it, I didn't have a stereo. All I had was a radio." And it goes into weird religious stations and really bad music on that trip through the middle of nowhere. I used to really enjoy the sounds, and then every once in a while, the station you were at would all of a sudden let out a screech and become a new station. I just wanted to bring that to a record somehow. It is kind of a concept record, but as if the word concept didn't suck. Along the way, the songs would have interludes that were radio stations with their own DJs that introduced and connected the tracks. The band's friends filled in as the radio DJs, including but not limited to Twiggy Ramirez, Jesse Hughes, and Chris Goss. This unique idea allowed the band to explore various musical styles and themes, with Homme remarking, "I think the radio was the only way to stitch these songs together. If you didn't pay attention, you might think you were listening to a radio broadcast." Songs for the Deaf captures the essence of the desert, its isolation, roughness, and beauty. Songs for the Deaf opens up with a radio station from Los Angeles called Clone Radio that goofs on the typical sterile radio hosts we've come to expect in major cities. It only gets weirder as you travel out into the desert. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of Grand Theft Auto's radio stations with their exaggerated versions of DJs. Songs for the Deaf saw an August 27, 2002 release. In covering the album, the press sometimes lazily referred to the band as stoner rock, much to the chagrin of Homme, who preferred the term robot rock. 3 singles were released from the album. The first, No One Knows, became the band's breakthrough hit, reaching number 1 on the US Alternative Airplay chart and peaking at number 51 on the Hot 100 chart. To date, it's the band's highest charting single. The song was also featured as an on-disc track for Rock Band 3. Who remembers playing those crazy Dave Grohl drum fills? The second single, Go With The Flow, also performed pretty well. It reached number 7 in the US on the Alternative Airplay chart. The video, which was animated, was visually striking and further cemented the band's reputation for creative visual content. The song also appeared as an on-disc track for Rock Band 1. The third single, First to Giveth, charted in the UK at number 33, with the song's lyrical content dealing with the role that drugs play in the creative process. While drugs once again played a role in shaping the album, the band seemed to have a different attitude this time around. Homme remarked, "As far as their necessity, for music, drugs are really on a long list of what it takes to make music, and they're no more or less important than any of them. I think you can draw inspiration, and eventually it negates any inspiration," he'd add. Songs for the Deaf proved to be a commercial breakthrough for the group. The album peaked at number 17 in the US on the Billboard 200 chart, marking the band's highest charting position at the time. It also earned the group their first gold certification, and the album's success extended beyond the US, with it going platinum in the UK, Belgium, and Australia. Following their third record, the lineup underwent a change. Dave Grohl went back to Foo Fighters, and they released their fourth record, One by One. That was another platinum seller. Oliveri was fired from the group around 2004, while Lanigan stayed on for one more album before leaving. The album made many best of lists, being the third highest rated album on Metacritic for 2002, and only continued critics' belief that Queens of the Stone Age were one of the most exciting rock bands around. In the years since, Queens of the Stone Age have had a revolving lineup and have continued to put out successful albums and tour. Mark Lanigan sadly died in 2022, while Grohl and Homme joined forces with Led Zeppelin's John Paul Jones for the supergroup Them Crooked Vultures in 2009. You might remember their hit song New Fang, that was all over radio at the time. Oliveri ended up later collaborating with Josh Homme in 2013, performing on the song If I Had a Tail for the group's 2013 record Like Clockwork. Dave Grohl once again returned to the drum throne for that record. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.